Good afternoon, everyone. So this is a video in response to a article released by Dr. Ezebilo of the National Research Institute. If you haven't caught it, go into the National Research Institute website and grab the spotlight article for the month of June 2020. And the article is by Dr. Eugene Ezebilo, Deputy Director of National Research Institute. His article is titled, "Is Papua New Guinea a Christian State? Evidence from the Constitution." So I'm just going to quickly give the highlights in that article. So Dr. Ezebilo refers to two criteria that one can know that a nation is a Christian state. And those two criteria are, one, that the Constitution declares itself, or declares the nation to have Christianity as its official religion. And number two, it states that the Constitution declares or creates, or the state creates, an official church for the state, or state church. In that article, he identifies several Christian states according to those two criteria. And he acknowledges that the Constitution of Papua New Guinea acknowledges Christian principles and acknowledges the guiding hand of God. You'll see that in the preamble. He points out that Section 45 of the Constitution, which guarantees the freedom of conscience, thought, and religion, doesn't protect or doesn't create Christianity as the official religion of the state. And by giving freedoms to other religions, it is not Papua New Guinea is not a Christian state per se. So, according to those two criteria, Dr. Ezebilo suggests that Papua New Guinea is not a Christian state, and that if it wants to become a Christian state, it must amend Section 45 of the Constitution to reflect that PNG must become, or PNG is a Christian nation. So we would have something that's a bit more definite proclamation from the Constitution that PNG is a Christian state. And secondly, he says that we have to establish a Christian state. So I'm going to just talk a bit about the countries that Dr. Ezebilo has identified in his article, which he says are Christian states, and at least some of them, not all of them, and why they are Christian states. And then we discuss, I'll have some response for Dr. Ezebilo's position in the article. So he identifies a few, not him, but the Wikipedia article that I believe he bases his whole article on, because he basically says the two criteria that are used to identify a Christian state come from, I found them nowhere else except that Wikipedia article. And anyway, in the Wikipedia article, Christian state, Armenia was the first ever Christian state, officially Christian state, because after the conversion of its kings and its monarch, or the people who ruled there, they declared that Christianity, or the Orthodox flavor that came out of that was the official religion for Armenia, and that was in 301 AD. This was about 80 years or 79 years before the Roman Empire became a Christian state, and as we know it. And the Roman Emperor Theodosius I declared that the Nicene Christianity would be the state's official religion. That was in 380 AD. We know that England is a Christian state because the Church of England is the official religion of the state, and the Queen of England is the head of the Church of England. So, in a way, you would consider her representative in our nation, the head of state, the Governor General, would be like the head of the Church of England in Papua New Guinea. That's not a really necessary way to look at it, but I'm just saying. Anyway, examples of constitutions that declare the Christianity as the official religion. Few examples. Argentina says the federal government supports the Roman Catholic Apostolic religion. So it makes the Roman Catholic Apostolic religion as the official state. In the sense, or in the word support, you could imply it finances, it gives legal recognition plus some So it finances the religion and supports it, supports the practice of it, endorses the practice of it. Costa Rica constitution says the Roman Catholic apostolic religion is that of the state, which contributes to its maintenance. So the state contributes to the maintenance of the Roman Catholic apostolic religion, without preventing the free exercise in the Republic of other beliefs that are not opposed to the universal morality or good customs. Okay, so that's Costa Rica. And then Zambia in Africa, it's a declaration. We, the people of Zambia, declare the Republic a Christian nation while upholding the right of every person to enjoy that person's freedom of conscience and religion. So a declaration there. And then Tuvalu, back close to home, Tuvalu states in its constitution similar words to that of the PNG constitution. Whereas the people of Tuvalu, acknowledging God as the Almighty and everlasting Lord and giver of all good things, humbly place themselves under his good providence and seek his blessing upon themselves and their lives. And it goes on to say, and whereas the people of Tuvalu desire to constitute themselves as an independent state based on Christian principles, the rule of law, and Tuvaluan custom and tradition. So very similar to Papua New Guinea constitution, where we declare ourselves to uphold and pass on to the next generation after us our noble traditions and our Christian principles that are ours now. So very similar. Tuvalu has a Church of Tuvalu, but I don't think it's officially established by the law, or it was just created some time back, and it's kind of regarded as the official church, and which means basically they participate in the official events and are in charge of ceremonies and so on. So the Church of Tuvalu. So there's some examples of the constitution enshrining Christian principles into the ethos of the state. Okay, so responding to Dr. Ezebilo. So my first response is this: Dr. Ezebilo's two criteria for assessing or asking the question or answering the question that whether a church nation is a Christian state or not come from these two things, that it declares the religion to be so, to be the official state, and that there's a official church state. Now, I haven't seen any official UN document that describes such a phenomenon, that a nation is considered a religious nation because of these two things. All right, so I wondered why he got those two criteria from, and they're basically from the Wikipedia article. And if you look at the Wikipedia article, those criteria come from basically two books and two writers, not really any legal authority or anything. So you'd find the reference in the Wikipedia article according for those two criteria. Number one, the first one is in the church state. Stephen Blackhouse. Stephen Blackhouse, in his 2011, I think it was an article or is it a book, Kierkegaard's Critique of Christian Nationalism, released under the Oxford University Press. Yeah, it's a book. And he says in that book, I haven't read it, but the excerpts are there in the Wikipedia article, which are the basis for saying the two criteria. It is only as an established institution that a church can fully preserve and promote Christian tradition to the nation. One cannot have a Christian state without a church state. All right, so this is one man's opinion. Maybe he did some studies of how Christianity was protected and safeguarded and promoted within a nation. And he says, in his interpretation, Christianity can only be preserved and promoted through a church state, a state church. The other criteria is, or the other person who promoted this idea was Edward Erbel. I think that's how his name is called. Edward Erbel, writing in 2013, a book called Church and State in Western Society, Established Church, Cooperation and Separation, published under Ashgard. Okay, so I haven't read that either, but there's an excerpt there, and there's an quote there that says, under the established church approach, the government will assist the state church, and likewise the church will assist the government, religious education is mandated by law to be taught in all schools, public or private. So this is where the Wikipedia gets its two criteria from, not from the United Nations, not from anything official. It's the opinion of two book writers, right? And Dr. Ezebilo has taken those two criteria and said, this is how we assess whether Papua New Guinea is a Christian nation or not. So, so my question was, where did these two criteria come from? Are they official? Are they recognized under international law or international relations? And so basically they come from two writers if you take the Wikipedia article at face value. All right, so that's fine. If you just take those two articles, my first impression, when you take those two articles, we are not a Christian state. I agree with Dr. Ezebilo. As much as painful as that might be to some Christians who want us to be an official Christian state, if you just take those two articles, two criteria, we are not a Christian state. But then if you ask yourself, well, on whose authority do we take those two articles as the only authorities to measure whether a state is Christian or not? Okay? And so if you look around you, there's no real official criteria around us. In international law, in international relations, people don't look at a place and say that nation's a Christian state or otherwise because of these two things alone, right? And it's so the post that I put out in the afternoon saying that I'll be releasing a video, I said Christianity in Papua New Guinea is as official as rugby league is our official sport, right? Because it's not something that's official. There's no, under the National Identity Act, we have not declared that that Christianity is our national religion. The head of state has not made some kind of declaration about it. It's just being an informal, unofficial kind of statement made by both church leaders as well as made by political leaders over the course of time, and it has become part of our cultural understanding of who we are and what our identity is. So I asked myself the question, what makes a nation a Christian nation? So on one side you have the question of a Christian state arises from its official documents, its laws, its legal system, everything that creates its entity, its official legal entity. Then you look at the Constitution and you can assess a nation just based on the Constitution. But again, like I said, these two criteria come only from two people, and Wikipedia has made it sound like it's the official criteria by which you assess a nation to be Christian or not. Let's just pull out from Christianity and let's think about what makes a nation a religious nation. So if you think of the best examples right now, Christianity is not a good example of maybe any Christian nation in the world are not good examples of being Christian states, because they're not really Christian as in ruled completely by Christian law, by the laws of Moses, or by the Judaistic laws, or by the Christian laws, whatever they are. There's no real good example of that. If you find any Christian state, and the examples that are provided on the Wikipedia article still allow for other religions to be practiced. So even though they're officially Christian states, other religions are allowed to be practiced in those states. So they're not really good examples. But if you think about it, so I asked myself this question: what makes a Christian nation Christian? What is a Christian nation? And a nation is, now you're looking at, when you use the word nation instead of state, now you're looking at the nation as in the people, the practices, the culture, the prevailing beliefs, and that becomes relevant to defining a nation. And so here we are, like if we ask the question, so this is my understanding, if you ask the question, what makes a Christian nation? If you look at the Christian state, I would say we would be a Christian state if we embrace Judeo-Christian or the Mosaic law maybe, but that doesn't really make sense, because that's the Judaistic kind of law. Christianity itself doesn't have any laws. Christianity is not based on laws. So you can't say that we live in a theocracy, we live in a Christian theocracy, because we don't really have laws that we promote in the Christian religion itself, unlike, say, the religions of Islam. So the religion of Islam, say, they have Sharia law, and some nations apply Sharia law to certain aspects of the legal system they have. Some in just civil matters between people. Some also they apply Sharia law to criminal matters as well. So in some nations they apply Sharia law, and that's a religious law that's become a state law. For Papua New Guinea, we won't have that kind of situation because we don't have a Christian law that becomes state law. It doesn't work that way. We've embraced common law, but we have the laws that we have, and all the common law nations have the laws that they have embraced are based on, I guess you could say, the Christian ethos, or the belief that there is a God, and God made man in his image, and therefore man has inherent dignity and worth, and therefore all the laws have come out of that. So that's the just some thoughts on what makes a Christian nation. But if you look at it, so these are my thoughts now, and now this in another set of, in another level, these are only my thoughts. I have no authority to speak this into reality and make this become the rule for any nation or any in the world. But when you look at it, like when you consider just a nation, what makes a nation Christian is, well, one of the things identified in Dr. Zabilo's article and in the Wikipedia article was that you have a generally Christian population, a majority Christian population. In some articles that I've read, they refer to nations that are majority Muslim or majority Christian or majority so-and-so, right? And so that's the way that they identify in terms of the religious aspect of a nation. They identify the population, the religion of most of the people in the country. So what are they practicing? In Papua New Guinea, we have majority, obviously, Christian. I think Dr. Zabilo puts it at 97% or 95%, definitely above 90%. Professing Christians, perhaps not in the Christian understanding of Christian, born-again Christian, maybe not at that level yet, but at least we believe in God and in the Bible, and we believe in Jesus Christ and so on. So that's the majority of the population subscribe to the Christian ethos, and they identify as Christians, even if they're not properly practicing. The other aspect of a Christian nation, in my opinion, is that a nation at the core of its ethos, it believes in the Christian ethos, the Christian ethic. So that's like the things, like I said, by believing that we are made in the image of God, and that we must treat each other with respect, with love, and so on. So at the core of it, we have that Christian ethos forming our basic fundamental beliefs. Obviously, we don't practice it perfectly, but so on. And in a sense, for me as well, a Christian nation would be a nation that, in some sense, maybe not in the official sense, but in some sense, the Constitution argues or makes some reference to the Christian ethic or to Christianity as like the basis. So it recognizes the historical and contemporary relevance of Christianity in national life. And I think you might find that in our Constitution. I think another good criterion to add in that would be that the national calendar is ordained with Christian dates, and we acknowledge Christian holidays, right? So Christmas, Easter, and so on. Now, without going into the debate of the origin of these holidays, they are recognized as Christian holidays. So we ordain our calendar according to those Christian holidays as well. And then so the other criteria for a Christian nation is that it allows for the practice of other religions, and that this is consistent with the Christian ethos, because the Christianity itself allows for people to have freedom of choice, freedom of free will, and even God grants that himself, right? So that's allowed in that sense. All right. Last thing. So when you get down to the heart of it, now what's the conclusion? Is PNG a Christian nation? So my short answer, yes. My short answer is yes. Papua New Guinea is a Christian nation. We may not explicitly declare that in the Constitution, but that's disputable. That's arguable, because we do say in the Constitution that we pledge ourselves to God and pass on to those who come after us our one noble traditions and the Christian principles that are ours now. So the Christian principles became ours, became Papua New Guinea's in 1975 when this constitution came into effect. So in a way, we effectively said we are a Christian nation. We believe in the Christian principles. We do now establish, our preamble says, do now establish this sovereign nation and declare ourselves under the guiding hand of God to be the independent state of Papua New Guinea. We recognize in our constitution the guiding hand of God. This was fundamental to us from the start, that we are not a nation created out of a vacuum or just by the will of men, that we recognize God's sovereignty throughout the earth, and then we recognize his sovereignty throughout our nation. Number three, another why I say that the Constitution points us in the direction of making Papua New Guinea a Christian nation is national goal number one. National goal number one is integral human development. Integral human development, if you Google it right now, the only hits you will get are from Catholic websites. The integral human development is a pillar of what you call the Catholic social teachings. Catholic social teachings were the driving force for the Catholic Church's social work, social work and relief work. And in 1967, this is what Pope Paul VI said in 1967 in his book, Progress of the People. Development cannot be limited to mere economic growth alone. In order to be authentic, it must be complete, integral. That is, it has to promote the good of every person and the whole person. So this is a direct quote from Pope Paul VI. And it's a Catholic principle, a Catholic Church principle. And the fact that we have embraced integral human development as one of, or if not the first pillar or national goal of our nation, it makes us a Christian nation. We are implementing a Christian idea when we pursue integral human development in the state, in the nation. And I thank God for our forefathers or our drafters who put this in the Constitution, because they are recognizing the real meaning of development. It's not just economic development, bridges, lots of money in the bank, lots of whatnot, material things. It's recognizing that the human being must develop as a whole human being. Otherwise, it's not full development. And the Constitutional Planning Committee reflects this. It says, they say, we do not take development to be synonymous with material progress. For us, the only authentic development is integral human development, straight out of Catholic social teachings. This means that we use, I quote, quote unquote, this means that we use the term development to mean nothing less than the unending process of improvement of every man and woman as a whole person. I think that's beautiful. Every human being in Papua New Guinea must develop as a whole person, not just on one side of their lives only, not just material or economic growth. They must develop as a whole person. So this principle for me is straight out of the Catholic social teachings, and the fact that we have embraced it, we're Catholic or we're Christian. And finally, if you haven't read your basic social obligations on the preamble, basic social obligation I, it says this: in the case of children, to respect their parents. I love this one. In the case of children, to respect their parents. In other words, this is straight out of Ephesians chapter 5 and Ephesians chapter 6. Children, obey your parents, for this is the right thing to do. So these are all from the Constitution, right? And they all point us to the Christian ethic. And if they point us to the Christian ethic, the fundamental document of Papua New Guinea is telling us, take heed of Christian principles. Grow the nation on Christian principles. Because if you don't, you miss what the true meaning of development. You miss the true meaning of freedom. And I think for me that's powerful. So, whatever Wikipedia says, that's fine. Whatever Dr. Eugene Ezebilo says, I appreciate that he put out this article, which is now making us think about this and talk about this in a serious way. Whatever they say, look at the Constitution. It points us to the fact that we are created under the guiding hand of God, and we subscribe to the Christian principles that are ours now. thank you for watching. This video has gone on much more longer than I thought, but I think you'll appreciate the thoughts that we have been shared today. So thank you and have a good evening.